The following documentation was initiated by the blatant overtaking of wild dumping of garbage in nature, both on private grounds and in public spaces. There is hardly a vehicle-accessible location along the roads in New Brunswick and in our woods that is not trashed. Anything that is transportable is thrown into ditches, tossed on the shoulders of dirt roads, onto trails, or simply where someone before has also already dumped his garbage, household waste, bulky waste, furnishings, empty cans and bottles. Everything useless has to go. This is all the more incomprehensible, since each citizen has already paid for both the weekly household waste collection and the 3-time annual big garbage pickup via the property tax. Only completely idiotic and or ignorant people can treat our nature so badly. Clear cuts are a rape of nature. Every time a clear cut has been accomplished, the now unprotected soil is left to erosion, washed away in heavy summer downpours and by the spring melt. The game is deprived of food and shelter, and the leftover wood waste is left to rot, which leaves large former wooded areas mostly inaccessible for game for a long time, but even so makes for a tinder box in dry summers, when it dries and provides excellent additional fuel in any wildfire. These two issues are dealt with in this documentation. It's not a professional one, no. It's just a simple report of what can be seen by everyone who wants to see and who cares. And it's meant to be a wake-up call to those who are responsible to protect our environment to act on these problems. Most likely, the public will hear some warm words on these issues and is appeased with a few actions of good publicity. And that was it. Business as usual. But without action, the garbage in the nature will not disappear. To the contrary, more and more garbage will not just litter, but cover large parts of the environment. Vows illegal dumping will not stop without proper action against it. Some of it is outright dangerous, like plastic bags, broken glass, oil cans etc. Dumped vehicles, no matter how long they are already out there, might still spill oil. And for the clear cuts, business interest will kill nature concern, as always. The homicide argument is job killing. And it's not only the big companies who act against nature, it's the private woodlot owner, too. When the majority of trees has just grown to make a 4x4 out deluge. The viewer might find that the quality of the images or the video clips are not first class. Right so. Every image and clip was made by using a $100 photo camera with a video feature. Professional video camera. What is most disturbing? No regular and reliable garbage collection. It's even more incomprehensible that it's still done this way nowadays. Walk the woods and you will find relatively new garbage atop of that dumped there in the past. And the kind of items makes it clear that quite some effort was necessary to get the fridges, truck tires, building rubble, furniture and large amounts of other garbage out there. How much easier and comfortable would it have been to put these things just to the curb for pickup? And for the tires, the recycling fee for them has already been paid with the purchase price. So why not return them for free to the next tire dealer or a garbage depot? If you haul them to the woods or the dealer doesn't make any difference in terms of the effort. And most likely one goes more often to the next village or town anyway, than to the woods. This film shows at times sequences which start with the presence of any sort of garbage, followed by unlittered areas for some time, before again presenting more garbage. The reason for this is to prove over how much ground the garbage is spread. All the garbage shown up here reflects one large dumping ground on the same property, spread along the wood edge. And not to make the viewer believe this is a single incident, here's another sample of environmental misbehavior, to call it mildly. When seeing such a crime against nature, one has to ask, if people, who commit such things, are totally devoid of any environmental consciousness. As clearly noticeable here, this ditch is easy accessible by a forest road, and because so much garbage has been dumped, it's only fair to assume that many people got rid of their stuff here. Many illegal dumping sites include tires of all kinds and sizes. But often only tires are tossed at a spot. And these images give an idea of how often this happens and how many tires are dumped. As said before, this is the most incomprehensible behavior. And why stop at tires? When the car is gone for good, toss it also somewhere in the woods, too, as these pictures clearly document. Out of fairness it's to say, no newer wrecks were found, only decade-old ones. At least the car salvage idea has at last reached into the population. But who's to say no more fuel or oil is dripping out of leaked tanks, differentials, and radiators? While some racks have been dumped without motors, others haven't, and differentials and radiators were present in every found rack. Seeing the former pride of their owners rusting in an environment where they absolutely not belong in, makes one think, these places surely rival every official junkyard. What's most irritating, is, that the environment pigs not only litter our nature with their big garbage, but even so with regular household and kitchen trash. Look closely, and the next pictures show clearly pizza cartons, milk cartons, bakery products, plastic boxes and other garbage, that unambiguously belong into the blue recycling bag for regular collection. Which brainless stupid carries instead his stuff for miles just to dump it on the roadside? The large quantity and kind of items makes it crystal clear, that the former content was not intended to consume en route, except, one has a pizza oven in his It's just disgusting. There is practically nothing that is not thrown into nature, even used diapers. And this is particularly disturbing. Before you carry these things in your car somewhere, you have to wrap them properly to keep them from leaking into your car and to avoid the stink. Once you have done this, why not just put this stuff into the bag for residual waste instead of bothering with additional hassle? It's just insane. Now see, how much work somebody put into this task. All the garbage but for the small furniture, has properly been loaded into a blue recycling bag. The only different thing that should have been considered back then, was, to separate the recyclable items from residual items, and both bags could have been put to the curb for collection. Instead, well, here's the result of ignorance and outright stupidity. And here, clothing, even leather clothing. It should have been put into a residual garbage bag for collection. Or, even better, if only slightly worn or damaged, given to a thrift shop. Many things there. As said before, not only the big dumpings are the only threat to nature and a sad sight. A thoughtless throw out through the car with the now following pictures we come to another serious problem. Empty cans. More cans into nature than his competitor. One finds these things in areas you think, there's never been a human before, so remote these places are. But the cans are there, too. And no four-wheeler or skidoo should say, no, we don't do that. We keep the environment clean. Well, there are a number of places in the woods which are famous to a certain in 2 meadows. This video clip is longer than necessary in terms of garbage to show how remote and far from the dirt road this spot is. Toward the end of this clip you see a strip of brushes and small trees in the distance. That's where the dirt road is. Video doesn't show this entire yard, which was even more littered than shown here. But the real problem is the illegal dumping in the nature. Walking the woods, one never can avoid to stumble over the trash. And sometime one can only wonder, still usable things can be found like working extension cords, clothes and gloves, only dirt and if, as here on Indian Road, you see so much garbage spread over such a short stretch, you wonder if the culprits are actually still to be assigned to the species Homo sapiens. Reasonable people cannot really do that. All this garbage is located on just over a kilometer stretch on both sides of the main road. In some places there are white plastic bags in larger numbers. It's quizzical what they may contain, because instead of many smaller ones, only a bigger bag would probably have meant less work. So there must have been a reason for this kind of packing. And there is a reason. Looking closer, one notices that some of the bags have already burst, and they contain cat litter. Yes, cat litter. It's incredible. From an environmental point of view, nothing speaks against the disposal of cat litter in nature. However, there is a risk of spreading cat-specific diseases through cat litter, which could potentially endanger bobcat, lynx, and cougar. A safer disposal method is as residual waste. And that remains when the content of the torn packaging has been distributed through weather influences, again more environmentally damaging plastic bags. Shingles are also very popular for illegal disposal. Although no asbestos-containing roof shingles have been produced since early 1980s, and according to relevant studies, there are no other environmentally harmful ingredients, such a pile of shingles in nature is a very unattractive sight. This garbage is quite extensive. Waste of various types was disposed here unauthorized. No respect for the environment and the owner. Such environmental outrage you face stunned. The worst from Indian Road we have saved for the end. When one sees all this, what comment is left to be made? Even the most hardened character must be speechless facing this environmental abuse. Spared the garbage. What is not thrown in directly is flushed in by meltwater and rain. And this is the worst found so far: spilled motor oil, including a used oil filter and an empty oil can. Can you imagine? A complete oil change has been done here and the used motor oil has been seeped away into the ground. Can you imagine how much groundwater has been contaminated by this? This is a true crime. But the threat to soil and groundwater contamination is never far away. Just walk a clear cut after the logging crews are gone, and you find this, more or less empty diesel and hydraulic oil canisters, some still seeping content remainings into the ground. To leave this garbage in the woods after having finished their work, is a regular habit. The proof is clearly to be seen almost every time. With this we have completed the conversion of this documentation from illegal waste and garbage disposal to the even more damaging forestry way of clear cuts. The remaining part of this report is all about this. Now that you have read the recognized forestry guidelines of the German state of North Rhine-Westphalia, which apply, by the way, comparable to everywhere in Germany, Austria, and Switzerland, and compare them to the way in which timber is harvested in New Brunswick, do you see any similarities? Most likely, not. You can hardly see done anywhere in New Brunswick's woods. And now compare the size of the trees in German woods, still standing, with that of the already cut trunks shown in these pictures from New Brunswick. Almost all of those have been cut much too early, still being far from their maturity. But for the sake of fairness, it must be pointed out that a few forest owners in New Brunswick have recognized the financial advantage of harvesting mature trees and give their forest enough time to grow. But these responsible people are unfortunately rare. But here's such an exemption in New Brunswick, a hemlock stand, quite old, well maintained. It's a pleasure to look at. And taken only a certain number of trees out of the stand, will keep the forest intact but make room for natural rejuvenation. Forestry is a matter of generations, not something that can make for real profits within a few decades. The growth of a tree needs time. The next image presents a list of tree species, featuring their average natural lifespans as well as the years necessary to reach maturity, turning time, ripe for cutting. Keep in mind, that a stand in New Brunswick, 40 years old, is considered overdue. At the end of May 2019, these shots were taken in the immediate vicinity of Bouctouche. They are a prime example of the irresponsible use of nature. Each video clip and each photo shown is, although possibly not always easily recognizable because of the resemblance, shown only once here. There are no repetitions. All these stacks of wood were lined up at the same time along Gerardville Road, a dirt road. Even at first glance, it is striking how many stunted trees are in the stacks. Approximately half of the total amount of logging is made up of little shrubs from which not even a 2x4 can be sown. These trees can be used as trunks. Why such a massive intervention in nature with all the known disadvantages? Very simple, greed. Selective forestry is more costly than simply destroying a couple of hectares of forest with a harvester. But this is a short-sighted methodology, only focused on the fast, now to be achieved, profit. The logs, which are now being sold as pulpwood at slumping prices, would have yielded several times this money as mature wood. But only in the future, and how many forest owners in New Brunswick care about the future of their forest? Now cut everything, cash in, and in 30 years again. We live now, who cares what will be in 30 years? Responsible people do, but such are rare among the forest owners. Responsible forestry in this case would have been by selectively removing the strong trees while at the same time just thinning the stock to preserve the forest as a unit and thus its positive effect on the water balance in the soil and the microclimate, as well as its protective function for flora and fauna. Instead, there is now another natural fallow that leaves the soil to erosion and drying out due to unobstructed solar radiation. In addition, as already mentioned at the beginning of the documentary on clear cuts, the residual wood offers future wildfires excellent fuel. It is a sad picture to see how a quite acceptable number of mature logs is surrounded by so many more extremely premature cut, stunted logs, and in addition in the background the desecrated nature is visible. For how long will this duel with and against nature continue? We're sawing off the branch we're sitting on. Coming to the end of this documentation, one more dangerous, even lethal issue has still to be mentioned: barbed wire. A useful tool to fence cattle. Problem comes from how and where the barbed wire is set. Somewhat apart from the wood edge, mounted to posts, makes is more visible to both cattle and game. But fixed inside the forest to trees, covered by growing brush after a while, camouflages it and let in particular and even when pastures are no longer used as such, every sort of one set fence wire is left behind. No one cares to remove them. It's another task, to sensitize the farmers to this problem and make them to set the fences in a less dangerous way and to remove them after a Such an example is shown here: decades-old barbed wire, rusted, torn, grown over where attached to trees, and still partially attached to its original height, a death trap for wild game. Cattle may have been kept here for as long. And surely it's not a good idea to drop off barbed wire leftovers in a roadside ditch.
Are singing and mists hanging low. Meadows are waiting for sunlight to show. Morning has broken as pale turns to green, coloring nature's adorable scene.
Dew on the grass, a cool breeze in your face. Trees keep on whispering in a misty embrace. Listen and look, 'cause this beauty's divine. Look at the world now, it's yours and it's mine.
Love Mother Nature and treat her with care. She'll be the womb for all life that we bear. Earth is an oyster and we are its pearl, so it's time for a change. Time for our eyes to look at a brighter sky. Time to ask ourselves the question why. Why do we live in a world made of stone? Why do we shatter the land that we own? Money's the answer and the cause. We just go on without question or pause.
We have the power to make it alright. Nothing can ever be changed overnight. Listen and stop, 'cause this beauty's divine.
Cherish the world now, it's yours and it's mine. Love Mother Nature and treat her with care. She'll be the womb for all life that we bear. Earth is an oyster and we are its pearl, so it's time for a change. Time for our eyes to look at a brighter sky. Love Mother Nature and treat her with care. She'll be the womb for all